Have you ever wondered why, despite your efforts, you still feel trapped inside invisible patterns of pain? You fight for your happiness. You chase dreams, friendships, achievements. And yet, deep down, something keeps pulling you back into self-doubt, guilt, loneliness, and silent suffering. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Today we're going to uncover the hidden toxic habits that silently destroy your self-love and your true connection with your soul. Habits that you might not even realize are sabotaging your happiness, your peace, and your future. But here's the truth. Once you see them clearly, you hold the power to transform them and to transform yourself. If you're serious about healing and becoming who you were meant to be, I created a special guide based on Carl Jung's teachings, a guide that will help you reconnect with your true self, heal emotional wounds, and step into your light. You can find it linked in the pinned comment below. And with much love, this week I'll also be releasing a free self-love ebook, a gift to support your journey even more deeply. Stay tuned to the community tab. I'll announce it there very soon. If you feel called to continue this sacred journey, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Together, we'll walk the path of healing, transformation, and self-realization. Because you are not broken. You are simply waiting to remember who you truly are. Every great transformation begins with a single moment of realization, a moment when you recognize that the life you are living no longer matches the life your soul longs for. Carl Jung taught that true healing is not about becoming something new, but about remembering who you have always been beneath the layers of fear, guilt, and forgotten dreams. And yet, most of us walk through life carrying invisible chains, self-imposed habits that we mistake for just the way we are. We don't even realize that we are feeding our own suffering, reinforcing the very patterns that keep us small, anxious, and disconnected. Today, I invite you to walk through a different door, to look honestly and compassionately at the unconscious behaviors that are eroding your self-love, your peace, and your divine connection to life itself. This is not about judgment. This is about awakening. It's about recognizing the habits that were born out of fear, survival, and past wounds, and deciding that you no longer need to live by them. You are not your fear. You are not your mistakes. You are not the pain that shaped you. In this journey, you'll discover how subtle choices, the words you whisper to yourself, the emotions you silence, the moments you abandon your truth, accumulate into a silent self-destruction. But once you see them clearly, you can reclaim your power, your voice, and your rightful joy. Carl Jung believed that when you heal your inner world, your outer world transforms effortlessly. And today you are being invited to start that sacred work, to become a conscious creator of your reality instead of a prisoner of your patterns. So take a breath. Allow yourself to open your heart without fear, because the deeper truth is this: you are far closer to healing, to love, and to your true self than you realize, and it all begins now. At the core of Carl Jung's teachings lies a profound truth. You were not born to live fragmented, disconnected, or lost within endless noise. You were created to become whole. Jung described the self as the totality of who we are, the sacred center that holds both the light and the shadow, the conscious and the unconscious, the human and the divine within us. The self is not simply the best version of yourself. It is the truest version, the one aligned with the infinite intelligence that breathes through all creation. When you hear the term God's voice, many imagine thunderous commands from above or miracles that split the sky. But Jung suggested something far more intimate and revolutionary. God speaks through the self. He believed that the divine does not communicate through external spectacle, but through the whispers of your own soul, through intuition, dreams, emotions, and the quiet wisdom that surfaces when you dare to sit in stillness. The self is the bridge between the human and the divine. And every time you silence your mind, surrender your masks, and listen from within, you are not merely accessing psychological insight. You are standing at the sacred threshold where God's voice echoes softly, waiting for your return. Yet, for most of us, that voice has been buried under layers of fear, conditioning, and survival strategies. We mistake the screaming of our wounds for our identity. We confuse the desperate cries of the ego for the steady call of the self, and so we live divided, externally busy, internally empty. Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming your true self, requires a journey inward, a wise descent into the parts of yourself you have forgotten, rejected, or feared. It is there, in the quiet chambers of your soul, that the voice of God speaks with unmistakable clarity. You were never broken. You were never abandoned. You are the light you seek. This journey is not easy. Facing the self means facing the chaos you tried to avoid, the shadows you tried to suppress, the truths you were taught to deny. It means grieving the version of yourself that was built to survive, and welcoming the self that was created to live. But every step you take inward dissolves the illusion of separation. Each act of self-honesty, each courageous moment of presence, strengthens the bridge back to the sacred voice within. Listening to God's voice is not about perfection. It's not about doing everything right or pleasing some external standard of worthiness. It's about coming home to your essence and where you are already enough, already seen, already loved. It is a return to authenticity. They surrender to the silent wisdom that says, you are not here to become someone else. You are here to remember who you are. In Jungian psychology, dreams are one of the most profound ways the self communicates. Through symbols, emotions, and images, dreams bypass the rigid defenses of the ego and deliver messages straight from the unconscious, from the divine core within. They are sacred letters sent from your soul to your waking mind. Similarly, moments of deep intuition, those flashes of knowing that seem to arise from nowhere, are glimpses of the self shining through the cracks of ordinary consciousness. But to hear these messages, you must be willing to become silent. You must risk stepping away from the noise, the distractions, the endless search outside of yourself. You must create sacred space within, where the voice of God can rise not as a thunderous command, but as a whisper of truth you can no longer ignore. The more you listen, the more familiar that voice becomes. And with time, you begin to trust it more than the fear, more than the past, more than the temporary emotions that cloud your clarity. You realize that the self has been guiding you all along, through every heartbreak, every longing, every restless night. You realize that you were never abandoned, only distracted. The sacred voice never left you. You had only forgotten how to hear it. Today, if you are willing, you can begin the journey back, not by doing more, not by chasing perfection, but by pausing, listening, and daring to believe that the divine has been living inside you all along. The voice you long to hear is already speaking. Will you be still enough to listen? If the self is the sacred center that connects us to God, then the ego is the layer of armor we build around our soul to survive a broken world. Carl Jung described the ego as a necessary construct, a structure that helps us navigate the demands of society, identity, and daily life. It gives us a name, a history, a sense of personal continuity. But somewhere along the journey of growing up, the ego forgets that it was meant to serve the self, not replace it. It begins to believe that it is the self. It begins to believe that it is the entirety of who we are. And in that illusion we lose the sacred connection. The ego, driven by fear, pride, and the desperate need for control, builds walls around our heart. Walls that are meant to protect but end up imprisoning us. Walls that separate us from the divine source within. Where the self whispers in love, the ego shouts in fear. Where the self trusts in the unfolding of life, the ego demands certainty and control. Where the self sees unity, the ego sees separation. Me against the world, me against others, me even against myself. The ego is terrified of surrender because surrender feels like death to it. It fears losing its illusions of power, status, identity. It fears stepping into the vast unknown where the self dwells freely. But what the ego does not understand is this: in clinging to control, it loses everything real. In surrendering, it gains everything essential. Jung believed that much of human suffering stems not from life's inherent difficulties, but from the inner war between ego and self. The ego seeks safety in familiar pain, while the self calls us toward unknown healing. The ego clings to old patterns, while the self invites radical rebirth. The voice of God speaks softly through intuition, dreams, compassion, but the ego, busy chasing approval, power, and certainty, drowns it out with noise. Thus, we forget who we are. We live small. We shrink ourselves to fit expectations we never chose. We become strangers to our own souls. The separation from God is not a punishment. It is the natural consequence of forgetting the self, forgetting the divine blueprint etched into our very being. But the beauty of Jung's work is this: the bridge back is never destroyed. The connection is never truly severed. It is merely forgotten, buried beneath layers of noise, fear, and defense. Every act of conscious presence dismantles a brick of that wall. Every moment of authentic self-expression chips away at the illusion. Every time you choose truth over fear, you realign with yourself and with God. The ego tells you, you must be perfect to be loved. The self whispers, you are loved because you exist. The ego says you are alone. The self says you are part of everything. The ego screams, protect yourself, hide, fight. The self sings, trust, open, flow. Healing begins the moment you recognize the voice you have been obeying. Have you been following the anxious commands of the ego, always striving, fearing, doubting? Or have you been listening to the quiet certainty of the self, that deep, still knowing that you are enough? This is why practices like silence, contemplation, and deep self-inquiry are so revolutionary. Not because they change who you are, but because they reveal who you have always been beneath the armor. You were never meant to live from the surface. You were never meant to live chasing the world's fleeting standards. You were designed to live from the deep waters of your own soul, where the voice of God speaks, and where true freedom begins. When you live from the ego, life feels like a battlefield. Every setback feels like failure. Every rejection feels like death. Every success feels hollow because it's never enough to silence the fear. But when you begin to live from the self, life becomes a sacred journey. Even pain becomes a teacher. Even uncertainty becomes a dance. Even loneliness becomes an invitation to deeper union with yourself and with God. The ego will not surrender easily. It will resist. It will bargain. It will tell you that you are crazy to trust something so quiet, so invisible, but trust anyway. Trust the trembling in your heart when you hear the truth. Trust the tears that rise unbidden when you remember who you are. Trust the moments of peace that come, not when you achieve something, but when you finally stop running. The path from ego to self is the path from separation to union, from fear to love, from illusion to reality. It is not the easy path, it is the sacred path, and every step you take along it, every breath of truth you allow yourself, is a homecoming. Not to a new life imposed from outside, but to the life that has been waiting for you inside all along. If you walk this path long enough, you will discover a sacred paradox. Suffering, the very thing you tried to avoid, becomes the doorway to your deepest healing. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He saw suffering not as a punishment, but as a summons, a sacred invitation from the self to awaken, to grow, to shed the false skins that no longer serve our becoming. When life cracks us open through loss, betrayal, illness, loneliness, it strips away the illusions that the ego clings to. It removes the layers of false identity, the safety nets of old stories, and the comforts of unconsciousness. In the beginning, this feels like death, a kind of soul death where everything familiar crumbles. You may feel abandoned, broken, lost. You may cry out to the heavens, wondering why you are being forsaken, but in truth you are being loved too fiercely to be allowed to stay small. Pain is often the only force strong enough to break the chains you would never choose to break on your own. It brings you face to face with what you have denied, neglected, or feared to confront. The self, the voice of God within, does not create suffering to punish you. It allows suffering because it knows what you cannot yet see. You are capable of becoming so much more. Suffering cleanses. It refines. It teaches you to let go of what is temporary and reach for what is eternal. But healing through suffering requires more than endurance. It requires detachment, a sacred detachment not from life itself, but from the illusions you have mistaken for life. Jung taught that attachment to the ego's desires, fears, and identities keeps us bound in cycles of pain. We suffer not because of events alone, but because of our refusal to let go of what no longer serves our soul. Detachment is not indifference. It is not coldness. It is the courageous act of releasing your grip on what is dying, so that you can open your hands to what is being born. It is the wisdom to say, I trust the unfolding of my life even when I cannot see where it leads. When you detach from the need to control outcomes, you free yourself to flow with the deeper currents of transformation. You allow yourself to be remade by life's wisdom rather than broken by your resistance. In the furnace of suffering, you are not being destroyed. You are being reforged, stronger, truer, more luminous. The pain you feel when losing someone or something you love is real. But the greater suffering often comes from your unwillingness to grieve fully, to let go, to trust that something new and beautiful can arise from the ashes. Detachment does not mean you cease to love. It means you learn to love without clinging, without demanding, without needing others or circumstances to complete you. It is love rooted in freedom, the kind of love that mirrors God's love, unconditional, vast, unbound. True healing happens when you allow pain to pass through you without hardening your heart, when you choose to stay open, even as you bleed, when you surrender again and again to the wisdom of your unfolding journey. You realize that every ending was a beginning, every loss was a clearing, every betrayal was a mirror, showing you where you needed to come home to yourself. Jung wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious, by bringing what was hidden into the light of awareness, by facing the storms within without turning away. And so suffering becomes sacred. It becomes the catalyst for individuation, the process of becoming whole, of reclaiming every lost fragment of your being. When you detach from needing life to conform to your expectations, you open yourself to a grace that is far greater than anything you could have constructed. You begin to see life not as a series of random hurts, but as a deliberate and compassionate unfolding of your highest good. You begin to trust that the voice of God speaks even through heartbreak, even through the unanswered prayers, even through the long nights of silence. Detachment teaches you to rest in the unknown, to breathe in uncertainty without panic, to trust that the self is guiding you, even when the path is obscured. And it teaches you that you are not what you lose. You are not the roles you played. You are not the stories you told yourself to feel. Safe, you are the light that remains, the presence that endures, the soul that continues to rise. In the end, suffering does not diminish you, it reveals you. Fate strips away what is false and leaves behind only what is eternal. It returns you to the truth that was always waiting beneath the noise. You are whole, you are worthy, you are loved beyond measure, and nothing, no loss, no betrayal, no hardship, can take that away from you. Learning to listen to your soul is not an art reserved for mystics or prophets. It is your birthright. Carl Jung taught that the self, the divine core within, is always speaking to us, not in the loud voice of the ego, but in subtle currents, dreams, intuitions, physical sensations, synchronicities, longings. The problem is not that your soul has been silent. The problem is that life has been too loud. Between the demands of survival, the distractions of the outside world, and the relentless chatter of the mind, the soul's voice becomes drowned out, buried under layers of noise. To truly hear your soul, you must first create space for it to emerge. Here is a real living practice, not a theory but a way of being, that can help you reconnect with your deepest inner voice. Step 1. Create sacred silence. Before the soul can speak, the mind must become still enough to listen. Find a place where you will not be disturbed, a corner, a room, even a seat beneath a tree. Turn off the noise, no music, no notifications, no conversations. Sit in silence for just 5 minutes, not to think, not to solve anything, just to. At first, your mind will protest. It will offer distractions, anxieties, forgotten to-do lists. Let them come and let them pass. Return again and again to the simple presence of your breath. You are not emptying yourself. You are returning to yourself. Step 2. Anchor in the body. Your soul often speaks through the body long before it reaches the mind. Notice, how does your chest feel? Where is there tension, warmth, openness? What sensations arise without judgment? Breathe into the spaces that feel heavy. Offer kindness to the parts of you that ache. This simple act of attention is already an act of listening. When you tune into your body without trying to fix or change it, you begin to hear the first murmurs of your true self. Step 3. Ask and receive. After a few minutes of silence and body, awareness gently pose a question inwardly. You can ask, what do I need to hear right now? What truth am I ready to receive? What is my soul longing to express? Then wait, do not force an answer, do not analyze, simply become open, like an empty cup waiting to be filled. Sometimes an immediate whisper will arise, other times the answer will come later, through a dream, a sudden knowing, a synchronicity that feels too perfect to be random. Trust the timing. The self speaks on sacred time, not on the ego's schedule. Step 4. Record the messages. Keep a journal nearby. After each session, write down what you felt, heard, sensed, or even what remained silent. Over time, patterns will emerge. You will see that your soul speaks a language of symbols, feelings, and quiet certainties. By recording these impressions, you deepen your relationship with your inner voice. You train yourself to recognize it amidst the noise of daily life. This is not mere imagination. This is the slow reweaving of your bond with the divine within. Step 5. Act on the wisdom hearing. Your soul is only the first part. True transformation happens when you act on what you hear. If your soul says rest, then honor it by resting. If your soul says forgive, then take the brave step toward forgiveness. If your soul says create, leave, begin, trust. The voice that arises from your wholeness, not your fear. Each small act of obedience to your soul strengthens the bridge between you and God's living presence within you. A sacred reminder. Listening to your soul is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong relationship. Some days the voice will be clear and strong. Other days it will be a whisper at the edges of your awareness. Both are sacred. Both are signs that you are no longer living only from the surface. You are living from your center. Carl Jung believed that individuation, becoming your true self, is not about perfection. It is about radical authenticity. It is about learning to stand still inside your own being, even when the world around you demands you to hurry, to prove, to pretend. It is about daring to believe that the most important voice you will ever hear is the one that speaks from the depth of your own soul. So breathe, be still. Trust the sacred voice that has been waiting, patiently, lovingly, for you to return, because the soul never shouts. It sings, and it is singing your name even now, Will. You choose to listen? There comes a moment in every journey when you realize healing is not something you chase. It is something you awaken to. You have traveled deep today, into the hidden corners of your soul, where toxic habits once lived in darkness, where the ego once shouted over the quiet whispers of yourself, where suffering once seemed like an enemy, instead of the sacred teacher it truly is. You have seen that the voice of God does not thunder from distant heavens. It rises from the sacred ground of your own being, from the self, patiently waiting beneath your fears, your wounds, your masks. Carl Jung called this the journey of individuation, the holy process of becoming whole, of remembering that you were never broken, only asleep. And now a question stands before you. Will you choose to stay asleep, clinging to the comfort of what is familiar but painful? Or will you choose to awaken, to listen, to return to the truth that has been calling you home all along? Healing begins the moment you dare to believe that you are more than the pain you endured, more than the mistakes you made, more than the fear that once defined you. It begins when you choose to listen to your soul, not just once but again and again, until its voice becomes the foundation of your life. It begins when you embrace suffering not as your destroyer, but as your greatest catalyst for becoming the self you were always meant to be. It begins when you detach from the illusions of the ego and surrender to the sacred unfolding of who you truly are. You are not here to live half awake. You are not here to repeat the same old cycles of doubt, fear, and self-betrayal. You are here to live fully, to become a living reflection of the divine light placed within you before time began. You are here to listen, to heal, to rise. If today's message resonated with you, if you feel that quiet stirring in your heart, that pull toward deeper healing, deeper love, deeper truth, then I invite you to continue walking this sacred path with us. Subscribe to the channel and stay connected to this growing community of souls who are choosing wholeness over fear, authenticity over masks, awakening over numbness. And if you wish to go even deeper, remember that a special guide based on Carl Jung's teachings is available for you. You'll find it linked in the pinned comment. It is a powerful companion for your journey inward. Also, stay tuned. This week, with much love, we'll be releasing a free self-love ebook, a gentle gift to support your path of inner restoration. I will announce it soon in the community tab, so keep an eye open. You were never truly lost. You were simply waiting for the right moment to come home. This is that moment. Take a deep breath. Feel the ground beneath you, the breath within you, the light around you. You are already enough. You are already loved. You are already whole. All that remains is for you to remember and to live from that sacred truth.